Al, thanks so much for doing this. Amazing. I'm a huge fan. Go right back to 1976 when I was a wee lad in Dublin. I grew up in Ireland, and I bought Elegant Gypsy. I think I used to go to this little record store, and the guy that ran the record store, it's still in Dublin today. If you ever go to Dublin, check it out. It's called Sound Cellar, and he really just does vinyl. He does vinyl. He does some CDs, but mainly vinyl. And he said, "You got to check this guy out." Right. And I went back to my house, and I rang up some of my friends, and I got them around to come around and have a listen to this new record. That's what we did. And usually we chat between songs, and we're listening to them, and we were all just like stunned into silence. And it was like otherworldly. It was like such an extraordinary record for me, starting out as a musician myself and as a singer, even though most of your music is instrumental. It just stunned us. We were sitting, even when the record finished, we didn't say anything. Wow. But I just thought that's the wonderful thing about music. Like, here's you in in Jersey, coming from Jersey, America, making records, and here's me, this working class kid in Dublin, in the worst neighborhood in Dublin. Wow. And I'm listening to your music and connecting with it.
How do you like that?
I think that's a crazy, wonderful thing, really, how, you can make that stamp on my life emotionally.
Yeah, it was a great period of time in the mid-'70s, because if you made it in New York, you made it in the world,
You could make it there, you could make it anywhere.
It could be London, it could be LA, but New York was, if you made a presence in New York and you had a lot of publicity, it usually, got out there. But also my association with Chick Corea before that was, the starting point.
Right. Funny, talking about, we'll get on to Chick, but I actually, I did a lot of research before, obviously. I did my due diligence and did all my 3 days of listening to everything you ever did, reading, et cetera, And honestly, my favorite record to listen to at the moment is your new record.
Oh, good.
I love it, and I think at the time when I was younger, of course, Elegant Gypsy and the first record, the debut album, they were brilliant. That was time and context. But now, listening to your music, that record makes sense to me now at this point in my life. Like, I woke up in the apartment this morning and I was kind of just having a coffee, and it was just beautiful. And I thought also it sounds very content. You sound quite happy. Was that part of the process? Was that fair to say?
I think so. I mean, it was, it was 2020, and, I started writing the music as a means of kind of like therapy in a sense, because I was so kind of obsessed with the news of what was happening with COVID and all. And to get away from the TV, which was dominating a lot of the time, and my stress level was through the roof with that. I thought if I go down into the studio and I read music or write music, it's the only time that you could block everything else out completely.
Sure.
So I started the process of writing and just never stopped. And I wrote enough for 2 albums. That's actually a double album. And I just let my imagination go, Whatever came into my head, I wrote it out at the moment. And then, of course, a lot of corrections, and a lot of, and then I got it better. And then, I have a giant writing board, and I spent a good I finished it in 4 years, so there was some touring in the 3rd and 4th year, but I spent a lot of time between the hours of 10 at night and 5 in the morning.
Sure.
When it was very quiet, and I knew I was onto something, but for me it was a work of art. It was an aesthetic piece of work that I wasn't really thinking of radio or sales. I was really thinking of, okay, this is where I've evolved to as a composer, and I'm going to take it to the next level, But it took over 30 solo albums to get to that point where I can make that record.
It's funny because I've good friends with earMUSIC Records, in Germany, who the record's going out.
Great.
Max
Yeah,
is
my
a really
label,
good friend.
great label. Yeah.
Max Vaccaro, and who runs the label, and he's always been a huge music fan, and I'm sure he was a fan of yours. He likes anything that's brilliant. But, it was funny when I saw that. Oh, Max, because I know Max for years, so it's like a tenuous link there.
Yeah, Max. When we were living, my wife and I, in Munich, it's going back almost 9 years, I would say. 10 years maybe. And, you know, I heard from my agent that earMUSIC had an interest in signing me. So Max came down to Munich, and I prepared, you know, some ideas, about maybe 10 different ideas for different types of records, focusing on electric, focusing on acoustic, maybe a piazzolla slant, a World Sinfonia slant, with budget. I mean, I got very detailed with each one, and I said, well, I'd just be great if he accepts one of them. I hope he takes one. He took them all.
Oh, fantastic!
So we have a nice.
They're a good label.
It's a good label, yeah.
I mean, they got everything from working with Deep Purple and Def Leppard, and also jazz and everything in between. You know,
scooping up all of
the heritage stuff, but in a good way. Why not? You know, because it's. I think this music is coming back around. If you could just hang in, you know, a lot of people will sort of, even the rock bands like Kiss, for instance, like, you know, they ended up playing in malls and everything in between, and then back playing stadiums in the end. You know, if you could just hold on, it sort of seems to go full circle. People rediscover it, and young people rediscover it as well, which I think is a wonderful thing.
Well, that's why we're doing the electric thing again. I'm doing both. I have my acoustic group. Tonight I'm doing a solo thing like on the private club, but which is kind of cool. I like doing that. But I've brought back the electric guys, and we're focusing on those early records, Elegant Gypsy, Casino, and the first 4 records.
Yeah, amazing.
And earlier with RTF stuff as well.
So trying to get some chronological thing going on here. So you grew up in Jersey.
Yeah.
And do you ever know Bruce Springsteen?
Well, yeah, he grew up down the shore, we would say Asbury Park. And I grew up in North Jersey, about 30, 40 minutes from the city. Yeah.
Did you ever bump into each other?
I met Bruce once, one time in Manhattan. Yeah, great guy.
And so you're growing up in the area. You've got one sister from my research, and so she was 7 years older, and so she would discover a lot of music and bring it home. Is that? Yeah,
she brought home all the records, you know, and so I got to hear a lot of the hits that were happening at the time, and she brought home the Meet the Beatles that just made a big impression. And then right at that time, I don't know what was first, the record or the Ed Sullivan Show, but I did see them live, yeah.
So the Beatles were your first love musically?
Well, one of the first loves, but the most powerful one. Yeah. And still to this day, there isn't a day that goes by where I don't think of the Beatles, or if I have a show, I play something of them, you know.
It's interesting that, because I produced Jack Bruce, because my day job was producing records, and I produced his last record before he died, and we became great friends, and sort of I would chat to Jack about sort of just generally music, and it'd say he just didn't like anything contemporary. He didn't like most rock bands. Like Pink Floyd, hate them, you know, Queen, hate them, the Beatles, love them. And even Pete Brown, who was the lyricist, the same, hated everything. Ginger, I worked with Ginger Baker as well, and Ginger
probably hated everything. Right?
He actually liked the Beatles as well, funny enough. And I was the last person to record, actually, Ginger, before he died. And but it was just funny that sort of all of the, like even the guys, because they were total jazz heads, even though, it was very fusion rock, but Jack and Ginger and Eric as well at the time were massively into their jazz heroes. That's even why they started taking heroin, because they wanted to be like their heroes. It was all, they took it to a kind of silly level in that respect. But I find it amazing that all those guys, including yourself, who are just incredible musicians, you'll kind of and ah about other players and other things, but the Beatles, like everybody loves the Beatles.
Yeah.
So why do you think that was?
Oh, I'll tell you. I don't think the Beatles realized how great they were when they were making that music. When they started out, they were just writing great pop songs, but they also had a great blend. Their voices sounded great together, or separate. There's something special about that, And then as it went on chronologically, they gave up touring and basically went to the studio every day like it was a job, And they had an open checkbook from EMI, and they could experiment with orchestral sounds, and they were lucky to have George Martin, who was really the, key to their sound. and brought a lot of different elements into the music. And each song was a surprise, you know, from Magical Mystery Tour on, you know. So it was, you know, it was an amazing 8 to 9 years of work.
Did you ever get to meet any of them?
Yeah, I met Paul. It was going back about 12 years ago, and I went to Abbey Road to record a tribute record.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I was the in-house producer there for 10 years at Abbey Road. I was the in-house producer at Abbey Road for
really?
10 years, yeah.
Oh.
So I know Paul as well, quite well.
Yeah. So
Charles Martin, yeah.
I don't know if you know the story.
Yeah, please tell. I mean, I know the story, please tell.
Yeah. So Paul has been, you know, at the top of the list of someone I wanted to meet in my life, you know, before the life has ended. So I recorded 3 songs at Abbey Road, and then decided, because it was booked up pretty heavily, and I would go back to New York and finish arranging and then record. So I went into the studio in New York, and I just couldn't match the sonic quality of Abbey Road. Abbey Road was just amazing, superior. And I tried it in my studio, and even my engineer said, yeah, it's a whole other world, you know. So I decided to go back to Abbey Road. But before I intended to go back or planned to go back, I wanted to just get away to write these new parts for those songs. And a place I always wanted to go was the Hamptons, way out in East Hampton. And so I saw this a house for rent, and called the guy up, and he said, "Okay, I can give you the house for 4 or 5 days, and but you got to be real cool because your next door neighbor is kind of a famous rock star." So he said, "I'll call you back to confirm." So I'm sitting in this restaurant, and the phone rings, and he says, "Okay, you got the house." I said, "Well, you got to tell me who's next door." And he said, "It's Paul McCartney."
Wow.
So as soon as I got out there, which was, I think, like a day or 2 later, and he was there, you know, it's like surreal. He was standing in his driveway, right next to my driveway.
You had a chat? Because it's funny, I've met him a few times. We've had lunch once, and I remember someone saying, I don't know if you should talk to him about the Beatles. He loves talking about the Beatles. You know, we ended up chatting about the Beatles the whole time. So he kind of really reveres that period in his life. You know, he's got no kind of, let's not talk about the Beatles or Johnny. He loves talking about it now.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think he even understands, as you put it, you know, the importance of what they did together, and that maybe he even knows deep down he can never reach that ever again. I mean, that's as good as it gets.
Never again.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I mean, melodically now, even with all the technology and everything, nobody's bettering that. Nobody.
No, not in that world.
Yeah, exactly. So just going back again a little bit further. So
did I tell you? Also, I didn't meet John Lennon, but I got to see him record when I was 19. And that was the first record recorded with Chick Corea, and John was in the next room. I said, oh my God, this is like another surreal moment. So I got to see him, you know, actually, I went in the control room and watched him.
Well, you got to meet the 5th Beatle, though, didn't you? George Martin. He gave you an award, didn't he?
That's
the BBC Lifetime Achievement Award.
A real thrill, yeah.
So you did actually properly meet a 5th Beatle, like. So.
Yeah, he gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award. Can you imagine?
Yeah, amazing, of George Martin. I met him several times because Giles is a good friend, and he would come in to see Giles at Abbey Road, and they're very, very tight. Giles
and he asked me, who did you listen to, you know, growing up? And I said, well, I listened to the Beatles. You know, they were inspiring. He says, he was shocked that the way I play, you know, he didn't get the connection. He was really shocked with it. I said, well, there's a whole generation of us guys that, you know, started because of the Beatles, you know.
So you're this kid growing up in Jersey. How did the connection with Chick Corea happen?
I was at Berklee School of Music at the time, in Boston. And I had gone to see the band a few times, but the last time I saw them was at
Return to Forever, that was, yeah. Return to
Forever, yeah. So I saw them at this theater called the Orpheum Theater, and they had a new guitar player. They had, I don't know if you know of this really fine acoustic player, Earl Klug, but they put an electric guitar in his hands, a Les Paul and a Marshall. He doesn't play electric ever.
Sure.
And I said, wow, that's odd. So I called a friend of mine back in New Jersey. This friend of mine was like, imagine like a Woodstock hippie, 7 years old. It was actually my sister's friend,
Sure.
Michael. And Michael always took a liking to my playing, and we used to go to shows together in the city. And in fact, we saw Return to Forever when it was the Latin version of the band, Latin jazz version. And so I told him, I said, Michael, I just saw Return to Forever with Earl Klug. Man, it's kind of strange, because Earl's a great player, but not in that context. I said, boy, I'd give anything to play with that band. That's all I said. So he took it upon himself. He happened to have a tape that he had made of me. He was an amateur recording engineer, really amateur. And he had recorded me when I was 17 on New Year's Eve. And at this particular night, he goes, I was like a real Boy Scout. I didn't smoke. I didn't smoke marijuana. I didn't do anything. He said, take this little tab. I said, what the hell is that? He goes, it's acid. Just you'll love it. It's New Year's Eve. Yeah. So I was tripping while I was playing, man. Like, it was so beautiful. And then I heard the tape after, and it was like the best I've ever played. I had lines that I don't know where I got them from. So he took that tape into the city and just bugged the hell out of Chick. He found Chick and the management, and he wouldn't leave them alone until they would listen to it. And that's how I got the gig.
Wow.
Chick called me up and said, we'd like you to join the band.
Not even rehearse, not even audition.
We heard we're knocked out. We want you to join the band. So he said, we need you in New York next few days. And then we played Carnegie Hall, which was sold out. That was my first show.
That must be mind-blowing.
July 3rd, 1974, 50 years ago.
Wow, so you go home to Mum and Dad, I'm playing Carnegie Hall.
So I go home to New Jersey. I get a ride quickly. I turn to my girlfriend and say, I'm leaving. She goes, where are you going, to the store? I said, no. I'm gone. So I get a ride to the house, my parents' house, where I was technically still living. And my mother goes, what are you doing home from school? I said, Mom, I'm playing with Chick Corea. She goes, who's Chick Corea? I said, Chick Corea, Return to Forever, my favorite band. And we're playing Carnegie Hall on Tuesday night, and my father was in the background. He goes, you're not playing Carnegie Hall, get the hell out of here. There's no, that. This went on for an hour, he just couldn't believe it. So I did the 2-3 days rehearsal. They loved what they heard. And but I was, shy and insecure, but they were sure about me. And so they send a car out to take me to the gig. And I take my parents with me. My father's like, he's shaking his head. He goes, you sure we're going to Carnegie Hall? This is a hoax. This can't be. I said, Dad, we're really going to Carnegie Hall. He goes, all right, but do you remember I told you about Carnegie Hall, how you get to Carnegie Hall? I said, yes, Dad, I remember what you said. It's practice, practice, practice. I said, yeah. In my mind, I'm thinking, it's acid, acid, acid. That's how I got to Carnegie Hall.
Have you still got the cassette? Have you still got that recording?
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I have to find it, but I know it's in a box of cassettes, and I got to go through it.
That'd be amazing to hear.
And I remember,
could do really well if you could, clean it up and.
I know I should make a record out of it.
Yeah, I mean that'd be legendary. I mean that's like part of history now, isn't it?
I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, I would definitely find that. So you're in the band. It's amazing. It's obviously you're in Return to Forever. Everything's going incredibly well. Obviously, there's a turning point where with you and Chick, in the sense of, I mean, from the research I've done, so Chick was also a Scientologist, wasn't he? He was into Scientology. So he tried to get you into it, because they usually try and recruit. Was that?
Well, I was enamored with the man. I mean, he was like my idol. I wanted to be Chick Corea on the guitar if I could, but I also wanted to find out what was making him tick. And so I showed a little interest. You know, I asked a few questions about Scientology, and he perked up like you can't imagine. And he turned me on to this book called Dianetics, and, you know, and a lot of the aspects of, the positive aspects of Scientology. So I wound up going out to LA and taking a couple of courses, and I just found like it wasn't for me, you know, in particular. It was kind of, there's good parts and strange parts to it.
Stanley Clarke was
Stanley, yeah. Stanley was involved with it at the same time Chick was.
And his whole management team as well, I think, weren't they?
Yeah, the whole management team. Oh, yeah.
How did you escape that then? You know, it's a lot of pressure for a young guy, because you're still only, what age are you now? What age were you at this point?
19.
Yeah, you know, young guy.
19.
So in the end, I know that, again, Chick was really encouraging you guys to write at the beginning, but then sort of...
Yeah, soon after the beginning, he mentioned that, you know, he'd like to see us write. And I was like, why? You know, I was more interested in doing his stuff, you know. And I said, I don't know if I can write, you know. Why is he encouraging this? It's strange. But it was a blessing, you know. I give him a lot of credit, you know.
And in the end, did he kind of, was that what undid things, where maybe you guys were getting very famous being out front, and it became too, you became too big a thing? Yeah, and that's exactly
what happened. What he wished for became the problem, right?
Right.
We all got kind of famous, and it was, I think we were one of the first bands to have a group record, and each guy has a solo contract.
So the ego couldn't really...
His ego couldn't stand, because he's sitting down playing keyboards, and we're out front. He was telling us to go out front, but once we did it, and the crowd was going nuts, he said, hey, wait a minute. It's my band.
And then there's a story about his girlfriend. So can you tell that story about he wanted a girlfriend in the band? Didn't he want a girlfriend?
Yeah. It's a true story. He, oh my God. So his girlfriend at the time was, her name was Gail Moran. Okay, so Gail actually played in Mahavishnu.
Right.
In the second rendition of Mahavishnu. So she's a very sweet, nice girl. And she had that kind of angelic voice. Her roots came out of Broadway. She was doing Jesus Christ Superstar. And so she had this kind of voice that, you know, very falsetto-y, and it really didn't fit with the band. Like, we weren't doing anything like that.
Sure.
We were hard-hitting, rock-oriented. And he wanted all of us to vote to have her in the band.
Right.
And we all voted no, including the management.
Top, isn't it? You know?
Including the management. So he said, well, that's it for the band. Wow. I'm breaking the band up. This is after we signed with Columbia, which became Sony.
Yeah, of course.
We had a multi-million-dollar contract. And he said, I'm handing the contract back. I was so depressed, you know. But I had my own contract, with something. But to see the band dissolve right at the, approaching the pinnacle was just a big mistake. Chick made a lot of mistakes, You just got to compartmentalize.
Was he being advised a lot by the Scientologists about decisions he was making? Was he being advised a lot by other influences?
Yeah, you would think. You would think they would talk him out of it, But so he got. I know the story. He actually went with the contract to the president of Columbia Records and said, "I don't want to do this anymore." After the first record, which was Romantic Warrior, which was huge. And the president said, in all my years in the business, I never met anybody like that. So crazy to do something like that. So they evidently talked him back into, keeping the band together, but in a completely different format, with her and a brass section, which sounded nothing like Return to Forever, as people knew it. And he decided to keep all the signing money, which we all had in our account, together.
Sure.
So it resulted in a lawsuit.
Ugh. That old chestnut.
Which is actually a funny story. I could tell it now, but he kind of forced Lenny to sign something to give away his rights to everything. I didn't sign it.
Wow.
So I went to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, but you're not entitled to just your signing money. You're entitled to a quarter of every record on the contract, whether you're on those records or not. I said, well, I don't want what's not mine.
Sure.
The signing money is one thing, so that's how he posed it to Chick's lawyer. He says, either you send the signing money by tomorrow morning, or we're going to go for the whole contract. And of course, next day I got Lenny's money, I got my money.
Wow. So
then I figured my rationale was, if I let Chick get away with this, because he's dead wrong,
right,
I'm going to hold a resentment for the rest of my life. Or I'll get what, we're entitled to, Lenny and myself. And maybe he'll come around and realize he made a mistake, and that's what happened. So a couple of years later, there was an apology and the whole thing, and we did a reunion tour in '83. Yeah.
You get your own deal then. So that must have been quite massive for you. You were in control. First record landed in Midnight Sun.
Landed Midnight Sun, I had no idea what was going to happen with that, because I was so green, and I hadn't gotten my footing yet. But it turned out to be the biggest selling debut record for the label that year. And when I listen to it now, I go, okay, I get it. I didn't get it then, but I get it now, why it was so popular.
It's such a
But then Elegant Gypsy, I really felt like, okay, now I know I have something. I have a sound, I have a style. I finally got it on that record, the second one. And that was the biggest one, I think.
But you must have, at times, I mean, I know you'd had a lot of famous players, from playing with Chick, but there must have been times when you were making your first debut, when you looked around and you've got Steve Gadd and you've got Stanley Clarke and you've got Chick.
I made the best choices ever.
The greatest of all time.
The best choices ever. Steve was my favorite drummer. And him together with Anthony Jackson, that rhythm section was for me the number one section. And they were hard to get, actually, because they were doing studio sessions every day, three different sessions, three-hour sessions.
So was it, were you overdubbing? It wasn't live in the room together? In the room together?
It's all live.
Oh, my God.
Live, because I only had them for a day, or sometimes a day of rehearsal, and then record.
Wow.
Because they were so busy. So I had everything written out.
All the charts.
And I didn't have the comfort zone of sitting in a studio or a rehearsal place for a week or a month. Like my own bands, that takes a lot of time to get it to that level. But these guys, they could read what you've written and then bring something to the table. And that's what they did. I mean, those records wouldn't have been as great without them.
Tight. It's so tight.
Yeah, and that's like almost no rehearsal. In fact, Steve was so messed up on Casino. Oh my God, we had to pick him up from the chair. It was like, drugs, alcohol, the whole 9 yards. And we have to lift him up and carry him over to the drums. And he always had the chart. He liked to have the bass chart.
Right.
Even though I had a drum chart, he preferred the bass chart. And he would tape it along the cymbal stands from one end to the other. And he was like this on the drums, and I counted off, and it was like boom, 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 perfect in time, no click track.
Wow.
And we all looked at one another and said, holy shit, this guy, it's Steve God.
Oh my God! Because listening to Mediterranean Sun, I know that was the hit, but it is an amazing piece of music, and the journey, it goes everywhere. It goes from rock to jazz, even a bit of George Benson in the middle when it, the middle 8-bit, and then it kind of rocks, and then it's funk, and then it's back to rock, and then it's back to jazz. It was like,
well, I had Chaco on the first record.
Of course, Jack was amazing.
Chaco's Anthony Jackson and Stanley.
Fantastic.
And I had Lenny White, Alphonse Mazon, and Steve Gadd.
And Chick as well, didn't he play?
And Chick, Chick and Barry Miles, who I started with.
But that must have been, as I said, a moment, and you're standing in the room with these. Oh, were you just so focused on the record? Did you ever give yourself a moment and think, how did I pull this off?
Things were moving very fast.
Right, you hadn't got time to think. It was just get it done.
You have to listen to it years later and reflect back and go, oh my God. And that's what happened recently. Last year I listened to those records. Go, now I see, I get it now. The energy, holy Jesus. So I thought, why not one more time? Let's see if we could do this again.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. Man.
So we're doing the electric again, and
you're going to tour it.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did the John McLaughlin and Paco de Lucia collaboration happen?
Well, that happened because in 1974, when I joined Return to Forever, we did our in the fall, we had done a tour of Europe. And when we got to Spain, there was word about this new flamenco player, Paco de Lucia. Everybody was talking about it. So I went to the local department store, El Corte Inglés, and I bought a few of his records. And when I went home, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, because he took it to another level. I could see he was trying to do something new, but his technique, his articulation, his rhythmic concept was levels above all the other guys before him. So I had it in the back of my mind at some point maybe to do something with him. So when 76 or 77 came around, I was planning the songs with my product manager at the label, and I said I had this piece, Mediterranean Sundance, and if they can get in touch with his label and get him to come over, that would be great. So that's what happened. His label
yes.
thought it was a great idea for him to get exposure. I really introduced him to North America.
Wow.
They knew him in Europe, especially Spain, of course, but not in the States.
Well, you all helped each other, really. Everyone went home in a balloon, didn't they? Because you're all introducing each other to each other's fan base. You know what I mean? So that's the wonderful thing about that record, because, I mean, you're talking about the best of the best ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite an extraordinary
So
thing.
he came into the studio, he didn't speak a word of English, and he had a friend of his that was translating. And we attempted, it was by the way, at Electric Lady, Jimi Hendrix studio.
Of course.
And we did 3 or 4 takes, and he wasn't comfortable, he wasn't relaxed yet. And so his friend comes over to me, he goes, Paco needs weed. He can't play without weed. I said, well, I'm not the guy, but I just happen to have my friend Michael, the guy that brought the tape to Chick, was in the next room. Michael was like my sidekick. And Michael said, I can get him that. So I brought him a bag of weed. Paco lit up, and then we launched into the next take, and that was the one.
Wow. And I think, wasn't it working with you was the first time he was in the studio? Was that true?
No, it was Jaco,
sorry,
not Paco.
Yeah, not Paco, yeah.
When Jaco recorded on Lennon and Midnight Sun, that was his first time ever in a studio.
So, but Paco was like...
That's what his father told me.
Wow. Whereas with Paco, his English was very bad as well. Didn't he have a translator with him at the time as well?
Yeah, the translator came over to me and said, Paco can't play without weed. I said, oh, shoot, I don't smoke, but, oh, wait a minute, I have my friend in the other room. He could get it. And it's in Greenwich Village. I mean, everybody was selling weed on the street.
So if you didn't read charts, he was just...
No, he doesn't. He didn't even know what a G chord was.
Oh, my God.
Just everything was by the ear,
Wow, so he just followed you.
Most flamenco guys don't read music. Classical guys do.
Because, again, that was an amazing piece of music as well.
It was really magic. It was really a magic take. We knew it.
Yeah, you knew in a hand.
You could hear Paco at the end, because we were right speaker. I was right and he was left speaker, I believe. So you could hear him at the very end going, and everybody in the control room, I still have a picture of it, high-fiving and like, yeah. We knew it was powerful. And it became a hit single.
Wow.
Not in the States, but in Spain, France, Italy, Germany. It was a hit single on pop radio.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a thing. Well, I think that's sometimes you get these music, a piece of music that just connects on a very visceral level. And there's no reason or rhyme to it. It's just people connect.
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing about the emotion in those recordings for me
is what wins me over, if I'm being honest. I mean, I love a great player, but ultimately, if it doesn't have the emotion and the feeling, to me, it's wallpaper music, you know. Right. So I think what you did was the wonderful virtuoso playing, but also the amount of depth of emotion and feeling put into the feel, you know, and the emotion put into the tracks is the thing that wins over the audience in the end. You see a lot of guys nowadays who are just incredible shredders, but it leaves me a little cold personally. I don't really understand why people want to hear that. It's like you may as well get AI to do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just there's all these amazing licks, but there's no composition.
I wake up every day, turn on my phone, and I see a new guy, like, with the most unbelievable technique, but against what? What are you playing? Where's the song? How are you using that within the context of the framework of a song? They're usually not. You know, it's against the groove only. It's, you know.
On the composition side, do you think that's probably, starting out listening to the Beatles, that's what the Beatles brought to your music, composition?
Most important thing.
Yeah, and melody. The melody was just so
incredible. Sing those melodies just at the drop of a hat. They all come right back.
And you never really worked so much with singers, did you, through your career?
I did. I worked with some singers in Italy, some, you know, I don't know if you heard of Pino Daniele.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we've done stuff together. And another great one from Sardinia, the most famous singer from Greece, George Zalaris, was the biggest selling Greek record in history.
Wow.
We did it together. Stevie Winwood, I was in a band with Stevie Winwood.
Oh, that's right.
Did you know that?
Fantastic singer. Yeah, I remember it now, but I'd forgotten about that. Oh, my God.
And it was
I love
great.
Steve Winwood.
It was really, I mean, for me, it was a thrill, because it was only a few years before that I was in garage bands playing Dear Mr. Fantasy. And here I am with the guy, you know.
Yeah, Steve was fantastic.
That was great.
Great player as well. You know.
He's a great player, but that voice, still got that. He still has the voice.
Yeah, he still sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Do you keep in touch?
Not all of no, but I did see him once, and some years later in New York. It was very warm, you know. I got to find him again.
So you've kind of, and a lot of your career has kind of been based in Europe in a way. Would you say, is that fair to say that Europe took you to its heart first? Would that be fair? As an artist?
Europe embraced the acoustic side of things, because even with Return to Forever in the early days, we had an acoustic segment within the show. And you know, most of those halls we played weren't designed for electric anyway. So it was the reaction we got with the acoustic. But then the trio happened. So after the Paco experience in '77 with Elegant Gypsy, we formed the trio with John, which was 1980, and we did a 2-month tour of Europe. And I really saw that the future in Europe could be the acoustic guitar, because I didn't want to have to. I was smart in thinking that, you know, if it was only electric guitar, can you imagine when you're 80, 85 years old having to plug into a Marshall? You know? My ears are shot now.
I thought it was interesting as well. Actually, I saw the show last night. I saw it Across the Road. It was amazing. And so I thought it was interesting. I was reading about how you had your percussion players with you last night in the show, you and the 2 different percussion players. And Boomby, have I pronounced his name right?
Boomby.
Yeah, you found him, didn't you, as a kind of... At some of your shows, you would invite a local percussionist to come up, and I think it was in France, and he got up on stage with you, and he's been with you kind of ever since, on and off.
Yeah, it was the year that I put out, I think it was '83, I put out a solo guitar record called Cielo e Terra, and actually inspired by a record that Julian Bream did called 20th Century Guitar. So I always wanted to write music like that, sort of avant contemporary instrumental, and I did a whole tour solo. But in the States, I would ask the local promoter if they knew a local percussionist that wants to sit in. So I met Gumby in Tampa. That's where that happened.
Wow!
And liked him immediately, you know, his personality and everything. So
he's Cuban, isn't he? So he's got that.
He's been involved with most of my projects, not all, but most over the last 35 years.
Because I'm sure you're pretty strict with drummers, because you're a drummer yourself and you play drums and percussion. So did you study drums as well, or was that?
No,
was that
I'm not necessarily like a hand and foot guy, but I'm a hand percussionist, and I just know what I want instinctively, and I would practice rhythms all during my high school years. You know, by just tapping a quarter note under the desk and playing rhythms against the quarter note. And I thought that would really help with, you know, the influence of that with my guitar playing, and it did, you know.
So obviously you mentioned Steve Gadd. Is he one of your favorite drummers, would you say? And Ringo as
if
well,
if I was a drummer, I'd want to play like Steve.
Yeah, apparently he's got a kind of...
and Ringo's a great drummer.
Yeah, he was
what he did, you know, he played for the piece, you know.
Yeah, he's still out touring now.
Yeah.
And Hamish Stewart is a really good friend of mine. He's in the band. They're just touring America. I think they're just finishing around
Here's
now.
my message for Ringo.
Sorry?
My message for Ringo.
Yeah. What's the message for Ringo?
Ringo should play more drums. Mm-hmm. And the band, I thought he was very generous, but I think the audience, and they're not going to say it, but if you ask the audience, they're going to see a Beatle. It's a Beatle night. And you had all these great singers out front. Imagine if they did Ticket to Ride and all those other songs that Paul's not doing. And you have the singers sing the song, and we know every lick of the drums.
Sure.
It'd be great to hear Ringo do those particular...
Does he not play them in the set? Have you seen him? Have you seen Ringo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does more singing, and he has another drummer up there, and he sometimes plays drums. But I would, I wouldn't have the other guys do, you know, Men at Work or, you know, Toto or whatever, do their own things within the show. It's like, it's good for them. It's nice that they get to do it, but I would love to hear more Beatles songs.
And would you say the same thing to Paul? Would you say the same thing to Paul?
Well, Paul's doing only Beatles songs.
Yeah, that's true.
Pretty much, except for the solo, the newer stuff sometimes he starts the show with, which is like a little rough.
And what about the
Beatles stuff is just...
Yeah, well, it's hard to... You know, how do you get past that? I mean, I think there's that thing about when you're young and you've got the energy and you've got the drive and, you know, it's like great art comes out of struggle. They're young, they're working class kids from Liverpool and, you know, they go to... That's all part of it as well. You become ridiculously famous and rich. And where do you find the inspiration again to kind of get back to that brilliance? Right. It's very difficult, I think.
That's right.
You know, the different elements that make something...
Yeah, then when he went to do, you know, after the Beatles, he formed his own group. And Wings had some good stuff, but that's when I went to a different area and I got more and more into jazz and fusion.
You were never a fan of them solo? It's just
not like the Beatles. You can never compare it.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I did like John Lennon I kind of discovered the Beatles through John Lennon when I was a kid, and I loved, you know, some of his first albums.
Yeah, there was some hit gems here and there. You know,
yeah,
it wasn't like. I mean, when you think of Magic and Mystery Tour, Sgt. Pepper, White Album, Abbey Road, it's like.
Yeah, of course. It is amazing when you're in Abbey Road and you can still feel the magic in two. I've worked in two many times and it's still there.
It was one of the great thrills of my life, of my career, was recording there. I felt like a 5-year-old at Disney World. You know, that thrill that we don't have as adults, I had that. Yeah. I got that again. And I was going through a divorce, so on one hand I was really in a bad way, and then that opportunity came, so I had the high from that. You know, which saved me.
That was in Prague as well, if I'm right. You had the kind of moment of, like, I think I should do something with the Beatles. Was that true, when you were here in Prague?
It was, I was sitting in the hotel, in the Mandarin Hotel in Prague. Wow. And I had a few days off. My band went home. They lived in Europe. So I'm sitting in this hotel saying, this might be a good time to do that Beatles idea I had for many years. It was here where I thought of it, and I said, I wonder what studio, and then I said, wow, maybe, I wonder if Abbey Road's still in existence. So I called a friend of mine in London, And he checked it out. And he said, yeah, they have one day open next week. I said, book it. I'm flying over. And so actually 2 more days open, so I had 3 days. But it all originated, the idea here.
Wow. So, yeah. And well, going through a divorce again, struggle, you know, sort of where some of the best things come from. And other guitar players, is there anyone that properly excites you now that you listen to, like new guys? I mean, we know all the some technical, but there's got to be one musician out there you think that you can kind of levitate towards?
Well, you know, there are the young technical guys. Now there's like a whole slew, maybe, you know, 20 of them. They're like, holy Jesus. But what's more important to me is the composition. You know,
Right.
I've outgrown the thrill of that aspect that was so important in the 70s. The 70s, we were lucky because we were a composition band, Return to Forever. So I come from that. But also technique was very important in those days. But, you know, I would more go for a guy like Ralph Towner, who's my senior, you know, because he's equally great as a guitar player, piano player, and composer. You know, so I go for that kind of player, or Gilberto Gismonti from Brazil. You know.
So what was the last record you listened to? Like in the last few days, even when you've been sort of sitting in your hotel room.
Other than mine?
Yeah, other than yours, yeah.
Tigran Hamasyan. Have you heard of him?
No.
It's the most cutting-edge music there is. It's like, I think he'll have a hard time reaching women. It's really super progressive.
Right.
But it's like time signatures like you can't even figure out. It's really brilliant music, super brilliant. I don't even know if I can play it. But I'm a big fan of what he's doing. He's an Armenian pianist, composer that is, you know, the most cutting edge. Like Return to Forever was considered cutting edge in the mid-70s. I think he's cutting edge now.
And like your kids, you know, when they were growing up, they must have been bringing music into the house. And was there anything ever they brought to you? It's, Dad, you got to hear this and check it out, and that you liked? Or
Not really. I have 3 girls, and, you know, they're girly girls, you know.
they weren't interested in going into the music industry?
What's that?
The kids weren't interested in going into the music industry?
Not enough. My middle one was interested in going to Berkeley for voice, but then got, you know, involved with a guy, and that was the end of that. So.
Is there anyone you'd like to collaborate with now?
I'd like to do something with Tigran, perhaps. That might be cool. There's a number of new flamenco players that want to do something, but it'd be really hard to recreate what I did with Paco, you know. Yeah, it's difficult to say. But there's this young French kid, I don't know if you're Antoine Boyer.
No, I don't know.
He's also just mind-blowing. And then there's Mancuso that everybody's talking about.
Sure.
You know, he does have pretty phenomenal technique, but it's time will tell.
Did you ever meet Tommy Emmanuel?
Yeah, Tommy.
We've had Tommy here in the club. Yeah, at dopeYEAH. He's amazing. He's the sweetest guy you'll ever meet.
I'm going to meet him for the first time. We
oh, you love him.
We're doing a
He's wonderful.
I know. He actually plays some of my music. I've heard him play 2 of my pieces.
You two should do something together. I think he'd love that.
I know.
It's a fun thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because technically, he's self-taught.
Yeah.
You know, his story as well is wild. So, like, when he was a kid, like a small child, his mum, you know, played pedal steel and used to get him to accompany her when he was like 5. And then his brother learned to play guitar as well. And then the family decided to sell the home. They bought 2 station wagon cars and started touring around the country as a band until the authorities came in and said, like, the kids have got to go to school.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's proper, like, punk rock. It's like the way he kind of, you know, embraced music. But he tours all the time. I feel kind of a little bad from the way he just never stops touring. He does love it, but as you get older, as we know, it gets tougher, and he's on the road all the time.
By himself.
Yeah, by himself. It's tough, you know.
Probably a tour manager and him, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, he did a thing here with Molly Tuttle from Nashville, which was fabulous, and she was the backup, the support act on the tour, but they did some stuff together as well, and that was beautiful. She's got an amazing voice. And but yeah, he works very hard, and he just, you know, because he obviously doesn't have the hits, he has to, you know, pay the rent, so he stays on the road continuously. I think I was saying earlier on before we started the podcast, it's like, it's hard work. I mean, you know, just the touring is like relentless as you get a little older. It's like...
How old's Tommy now?
Oh, Tommy must be late 60s. You know, he's still in good health. He had some, you know, some health stuff as well. But he loves it. But I think at the same time, it's very tiring. But he still plays fantastic. He played in the club here, and I thought this was going to be challenging watching him for like an hour, because it was just him on his own. And I was just agape. He was fabulous.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
So I think you two together, I mean, you're two of my favourite guitar players of all time. I think that would be... I mean, sorry, Tommy, I'd give you the level then as Tommy. But, sorry, Tommy. But I love you. But, yeah, I think the two of you together, because he brings a lot of charm to his records as well. And there's a sense of fun about them as well. But anyway.
I heard him do Midnight Tango for my piece from Elegant Gypsy with his brother.
Yeah.
His brother passed away.
That's right.
Yeah. And then I saw him do something with Mancuso. I think they did Mediterranean Sundance together. I saw a video. Kind of cool. But I'll see him in January. Right. So part of this giant clinic with George Benson. It's his clinic. There's a lot of people are going to be there. Stanley Jordan, Steve Lukather, of course Tommy as well.
That's going to be great.
A lot of names.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And did you ever write for film? Because I find a lot of your stuff very cinematic when I listen to it.
You know, my music's been used in the Sopranos series.
I love the Sopranos, the greatest TV ever.
Yeah. And they've used it more than once in...
Any particular episode, do you remember?
I forget the name of the episodes. In fact, we were watching the other night, and... an old episode, and I didn't even know it was in that one. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow, there it is.
That's the greatest TV series ever made.
I told them, I said, look, don't pay me for this. Just give me a credit at the end. They give no musician credits.
Really? I didn't know that.
No music credits, no song or musician credits. But you get all of the other guys. The carpenters, the guys that tape, gaffers.
Yeah, sure. What's all that about?
I don't know. I fought for it. I said, you don't have to pay me. Just give me the credit. No, we don't do that kind of thing. Why not?
Of course. But
people want to know.
Nobody ever came to you and said, I'm making a movie, will you score it?
Yeah.
Because I think you'd be amazing at that. Because as I said, I think your music is very cinematic. It goes through a journey like a film. It has that element to it. So I think
it just takes a director that's passionate about it. And I keep saying eventually, I'll get the call, but, it has to be someone who's a fan of it. I said, man, I love what I just heard. I gotta get in touch with that guy to write something for the movie. It's gotta happen.
What's next, Al?
I just have both groups, acoustic and electric, and I'm gonna keep it going as long as I can.
And obviously, this record, the 24, that's your latest record, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I don't want to see a studio for a while.
But do you write all the time, or do you write all the time, or do you put specific periods aside for writing?
I'm not writing right now. I just don't want to write. I want to let some time go by and hopefully find a fresh, period to write.
Oh, amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much. It's been fantastic. I'm a huge fan, and feel it's quite strange and weird after me being a 15-year-old kid listening to your music in my bedroom in Dublin, and here I am chatting with
I hope to go over there too.
Have you never been to Dublin?
No, not Dublin, but I played Cork.
Oh, you got to go to Dublin, man. Oh,
I know.
It's great. They love you there.
I know. It's not me that picks them.
I was saying
it's a promoter that makes an offer.
I was saying they're going to be yesterday. We were talking about Cuba, and I've been to Havana, and I loved it. And I was trying to put a record out in Havana. I went to the famous studio.
I always forget the name of it, the studio where they did Buena Vista Social Club and all the rest of it. And I walked into the control room and I said, like, where is it? And I was like, they were like, what? I said, where is it? The mixing desk. There was nothing in. Oh, don't worry. We'll get it in when you need it. I'm like, you know, I can't bring all these people out here.
Right.
You don't even have a mixing desk in the room. But everywhere you went, everyone was playing music everywhere. And it's a bit like that in Ireland, I'll be honest. It's like, it's part of the DNA. If you're in a pub at the end of the night and people are singing, whether they can sing or not doesn't matter. They love the expression of singing, you know, the emotional sort of thing of getting it out. Everywhere, every pub in Ireland, I guarantee at the end there'll be people singing, and that is something I miss in a way. I live in London, and I love London. I nearly say I'm London Irish at this point, but I miss that about Ireland, that kind of connection with music. And I think maybe when you were growing up in sort of Jersey, because you really gravitated towards Latin music, really, didn't you? That was your real passion.
I hung out in a lot of Latin clubs in New York, yeah, and I think I connect with that whole thing, you know. And it's something that particular kind of rhythm is not something you can learn. You have it in you, or you don't.
Right, exactly. Well, listen, Al, thank you so much for doing it. It's been amazing. I'm going to come over and see the show later on at dopeYEAH Club, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic.
Good, man.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.